I have a weird history with Wizball. The game appeared in my collection as a hand-me-down from a neighbour when I was about 6 or 7 and came as a lone cassette with no insert. I remember booting it up a few times, bouncing around the landscape, wondering what the hell I was supposed to be doing, and then never really playing it again. I brushed it off as being complete wank. I couldn't work out what the hell I had to do. I couldn't control it. I didn't understand what the power-ups did. It was just another in a pile of weird Spectrum games I didn't like. Over the years, I had heard many a good thing about Wizball, but in my head I still had this negative cloud hanging over it. Isn't that the game that's stupidly difficult to control? The one where you just bounce around and shoot stuff? I'd heard that the original C64 version was the best, so when I decided that this was the game I was going to go back to, I thought I'd go straight back to its roots. And it became immediately clear why I'd bounced straight off the ZX Spectrum version. The C64 game has an instruction screen. The ZX Spectrum version does not. Without the instructions available in the inlay, it was practically impossible for me to work out that in order to activate power-ups, you have to wiggle the joystick left and right. I'll be honest, reading this actually was a bit of a relief. That negative buzz that had sat around me all these years could finally be lifted. Let's get into it though, and before we talk about anything else, let me just play you some of this music. There's a number of reasons that the C64 version of the game is touted as the best version, and personally, this music is one of the top reasons why. But I'm not here to pinpoint which version is better. We all know this just leads to everyone crying in their soup. I'm here to talk about the game, and boy, what a game it is. Wizball was written by John Hare and Chris Yates, who later went on to form the consistently amazing Sensible Software. The game is touted as a shoot-'em-up, influenced heavily by Gradius' power-up system, whereby you collect pickups and decide which power-up to spend them on. Personally, I'm not even sure if shoot-'em-up does this game justice, but I'll get to that. First, let's discuss the story, the absolutely off-the-wall, purple-flavoured nonsense insanity that is the Wizball lore. It's both insane and important, because without the knowledge provided by the backdrop, everything is going to make even less sense than it already does. Wizworld has been sapped of all colour by the evil Zark, making everything dull and grey. It's up to you, Wiz, and your cat, Nifter, to chase the rainbow and bring some colour back into the world. So far, so buttons, but the story is then warped into the mechanics of the game. Wiz, our titular wizard, turns himself into a ball. A big green ball plastered with his overstretched face. Wizball, as he's now known, needs to collect colour from enemies if he has any hope of restoring the world to its former glory. But he can't collect the colour himself, of course not, why would he? That'd be insane. Not to worry though, Wizball is able to call on the assistance of his cat Nifter. But not as a cat though, Nifter has to be turned into a spaceship called Catalite. The cat collects the paint. It's unsurprising that this story was devised after the game design had already been put into place, but you know what? I absolutely love it. The shoehorning of surreal detail is consistent and manages to create a vision of a truly weird and wonderful place, far removed from what we understand, and that just sort of works. It'd be much less charming if, for instance, the game had no story whatsoever. You were a mere nondescript tennis ball bouncing around in space, using a smaller tennis ball to pick up bits of paint. If anything, that would make less sense. You've got to hand it to them for that. Tennis ball is probably an incorrect level of bounciness for an appropriate metaphor though. Wizball is very definitely a bouncy ball, at least initially. You'll begin the game by bouncing up and down, with your ability to move neutered to simply adjusting the speed of rotation. It takes a little while to get the knack down, but a full tilt in one direction is most definitely not the way to go. A little shunt to the left or right will add a slight spin to Wizball's movement, and that'll see him pootling along at a controllable pace. You'll still want more control though, and thankfully this is going to be the very first option in your Powerup bar. Each time you find a power-up dropped from a fallen enemy, you'll move a little further up this Powerup bar. You can save them all up and go for one of the options further down the line, but it's probably not particularly wise to do that. Being able to move around without constantly worrying if you're going to bounce right into an oncoming enemy is a fairly reasonable concern. You're given options though, and that's the important thing. The first icon relates to your movement, as stated. When you power it up the first time, you'll still be a bouncy ball, but you'll be able to control him in mid-air. This makes things a lot easier. Upgrade it again, and Wizball will stop bouncing up and down, although he'll still bounce off the scenery if you bump into it. Now you've got full directional movement, and you might actually be able to make it off the first level. Option 2 is a side weapon. Upgrade it once for the super beam, upgrade it twice to allow both Wizball and Catalite to fire in 2 directions, above and below. Option 3 is Catalite himself. This one's important, and you'll need him if you want to actually get anywhere in the game. He's also incredibly useful even outside of his forward-thinking paint-collecting tactics. It is worth pointing out that Catalite can be killed, so this option may need to be picked multiple times if you're as gung-ho as I am. My ability to control Cat is borderline embarrassing, so I often send him careening right into a big pile of shapes and then get all sad because I killed him. I suggest you don't do that. Option 4 lets you super power blazers, basically a big laser shot instead of piddly little pellets. Option 5 is the Whiz Spray, which shits out bullets all over the place. Upgrade it twice to make Catalite shit bullets out all over the place instead. This is the only option where upgrading twice may not be favourable to you. Do you want to be the one spraying bullets in everyone's face, or do you want Catalite to do the heavy lifting? Option 6 is a smart bomb, and option 7 is a shield. Annoyingly, you can go further along the track if you pick up another power-up, but it resets you back to square one, so make sure that you use one of these two if you've already upgraded everything else. The smart bomb kills everything, and the shield makes you invulnerable for a while. I personally find that saving up for the shield is the better option, as it'll certainly let you reap the benefits for longer than the smart bomb. But don't let me tell you what to do, I'm not your mother. Smart bomb everything if you want, see if I care. At the start of the game, and each time you die, the level is given a moment of calm. The only enemies you'll come across are these floating DNA-like spiral dudes. They won't move, but they are lethal, so try not to bounce into them. When you shoot these guys, they always drop a power-up, and it gives you a great head start before things really start flying off the handle. You'll typically be able to get your full range of movement, Catalite, and either a super beam or part way towards something a bit snazzier. Once you've killed those guys off, though, you're in the danger zone. What I find strange about Wizball is that the enemies, for the most part, aren't my own worst enemy at all. There's usually a number of other things that consistently snuff my lights out where enemies alone might not have. The landscape, for one, can act as a very good impromptu shield for a group of enemies that have spawned in a random place amongst the bizarre scenery. The enemy bullets, however, are pretty small and unremarkable. They can fit between gaps you perhaps weren't keeping at the forefront of your mind, and kablam, boom, kaplow, you're dead. It's not just scenery though, power-ups also act as a bullet blocker. This is particularly annoying, as if the first enemy you shoot in a wave drops a power-up, it'll mean you need to maneuver somewhere else to keep mowing down the enemies. This leads me to my last gripe, and I'm 75% sure this is my own failure. Once I get Catalite involved, my carefully crafted gamer skills fall to shite. What I mean is, when you don't have Catalite, you can merrily shoot away without a care in the world, but once you have your feline spacecraft at your side, the controls change slightly. Instead of being a maneuverable, malevolent bouncy ball of death, I become a largely static commander of cats. When you hold down the fire button, you lose the ability to move, and instead you start moving your Dulux guzzling cat. Just don't hold down the fire button, I hear you say, and I agree, but my hands won't listen to anything I tell them. I can't seem to get it out of my finger brains that I can't shoot and run, and this typically ends up with me flailing cat around at enemies instead of legging it. These are very, very mild complaints at the end of the day, but it is something that lingered with me after playing for a while. I didn't feel I could truly earn all of the deaths that occurred, and perhaps that's because I don't have the years of experience backing me up, but enemy bullets specifically are difficult for my eyes to pry out of the background star filter. Look, what I'm trying to say is that I'm shit and I keep dying and it hurts my feelings and I blame the game, that's all. Anyway, Cat might be a bit of a bugger to control, but he's your key to success in this game. Not only is he lethal, he also stores the paint you'll need to finish this all off. You'll come across enemies that are basically balls of paint. When you shoot them, they drip down. Rush cat in to pick up the drop before it hits the deck and you'll fill up a paint pot. There are 3 primary colours to collect, and these can mix together to create the colour in the far right pot. When this particular pot fills up, congratulations, you're an amazing human being and I am proud of you. As a side note, I should point out that there are some sneaky bonus colours that will sometimes drop from enemies, and if Catalite picks these up, a variety of things will happen. If you're me, it'll consistently be the annoying as all hell blackout option. This means that you can't see anything but power-ups and enemies unless you bump into the landscape, where it'll briefly show you what's blocking you. This is incredibly annoying and doesn't seem to piss off until you've completed one of the main colours. There are other colours that do different things, some of them are even nice things, but no, not for me, just blackout. Once you finally do fill up one of the colour pots, Wiz will be teleported into a bonus stage, which features some of the most offensively flashy screens I have ever seen in my life. I've said this in other videos, but I think I actually seriously mean it this time. If you suffer from epilepsy or you've got a hangover and can't deal with this, I'd skip ahead about a minute. The bonus stage is straight up shoot 'em up stage, and you'll be attacked from all angles, but you've no chance of losing a life here. You're tasked with shooting as much geometry back to the first dimension as you can, and this will net you points. Points mean prizes, and prizes means lives, but you'll also be able to pick up a few upgrades here if you're quick. Once you're inevitably smashed by a rogue circle, you'll get a nice cutscene of Wiz, who... Okay, so Wiz is outside the Wizball, but the Wizball is still there, so is he turning himself into Wizball, or is he riding inside Wizball? If he's riding inside it, why for the love of God did he make it look like that? What on earth possessed him to make this Book of the Dead looking bouncy ball? I think he's been living alone with his cat for too long. It's at this point you'll be granted a permanent upgrade, and it was upon reaching this point for the very first time that I stopped seeing Wizball as just a straight up shoot 'em up, but as something with an almost beta roguelike mechanic whirring away in the background. There's an element of getting stronger and staying stronger in that choice of a permanent upgrade. Do I lock in my ability to move like a normal moving thing, or do I lock in Catalite so I don't have to keep saving up for him? What about a weapon? Do I want a weapon? I don't know what I want. Help! Once we finally make a bad decision that will stay with us permanently for the rest of the run, we head back into the world. This time a little more colourful than before. Whatever colour you manage to collect will now begin to shade the respective level, adding a further neat touch to a game that feels like 1,000 neat touches rolled up into one perfect little ball. And that's probably about right, all things considered. When we take the base description, the actions of Wizball are to merely shoot enemies, collect items and repeat, but Wizball consistently changes the pitch of its angle. From the beginning you're focused on just controlling your useless bouncing monster face, then you're planning out your power-ups, then you're taking on a few enemies and hunting down colours, trying to work out your way around the pipeworks that'll take you to each of Wizball's stages. Then you're whisked into a bonus stage where you're focusing on points, then you're picking a permanent upgrade. Then you're concentrating on really not dying, because if you die, this angle is reset. Throughout the course of this play, you're going from practically useless to an absolute powerhouse, but the vulnerability of being jettisoned back to square one is only beset by consistently good play. Unlocking skills that stay with you through a run gives you enough of a head start, you can get back to where you left off with relative ease. It makes you cocky. It makes you think you can do this because you're the best goddamn wizard come bouncy ball with a flying spaceship cat this side of Jupiter. But then you die and it's all over, and you get back up and you start it again, because no matter how far you got, that angle that Wizball pitches has options. This time, maybe I'll go in all lasers blazing instead of being able to control myself with any degree of accuracy. Who knows? So in conclusion, I'm gutted that I never got to this sooner. Wizball feels like the game that I would have loved and mastered back in my youth, and while I've not yet completed it, I can guarantee you that I'll be hitting that victory screen in the not too distant future. Wizball is a fantastic game, as most people will already know, but if you've yet to take the plunge, I can happily confirm that it plays just as well now as it ever did.